So I do believe that history is on our side. We do have a trajectory, which I believe, as the great majority, we will ultimately prevail. But no, this can't be. You can't say too much about the danger we are in. Any vestiges we have as a democratic republic is rapidly melting away.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio,
Tumwa, Iowa.
Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up.
Hey, it's Ashley with Status Coup. Today I'm going to be speaking with longtime labor organizer in Vermont, David Van Deusen. David was one of the organizers involved with a large labor summit in Vermont this past weekend. So I wanted to catch up with him and, have him give us a sort of report on the summit and the state of labor in Vermont right now. So thank you so much for being here with me, David. This is really great. So you have been involved with labor organizing or organized labor in Vermont for quite a while. Can you tell us why it was important to organize a mass gathering of labor leaders and rank and file workers right now in this current moment?
Sure. So a few days ago, on April 26th, we had a large gathering of labor leaders from all corners of the state. Over 150 labor leaders and rank and file members gathered to talk about the current state of politics we're facing right now as a nation and as a labor movement, and to engage in all day long trainings on how to build real union power, how to carry out and win strikes, and very much asking folks to come to the realization that our true power is in our solidarity as a labor movement, worker to worker, and also in our labor. We will never be able to match the power of the billionaire class when it comes to political donations or lobbying and the money that comes with that in Washington, D.C. But we are the 99% working people. And this country, and the world for that matter, only functions because we go to work. We know how to use the tools, and we build the economy upon which all else is premised. So in this time of rising fascism in Washington, D.C., whose tentacles are reaching out to all corners of the United States, now more than ever, it's important that we develop our own independent power as a labor movement and very squarely recognize that we need to develop the skills and solidarity needed to take direct action against this neo-fascist government when appropriate and as circumstances demand.
Absolutely. And so, when we had spoken previously, you had said that, Vermont labor unions do have a history of pushing back against the political establishment. Can you talk a little bit about that? And again, like this history of engaging in this kind of action?
Sure. I think it's widely known that in 2020, in November 2020, we were the only state labor council in the United States of America to bring to our members a resolution that would authorize our executive board, at the time I was president of the Vermont State Labor Council, to call for a general strike should there not be a transfer of power on January 20th, 2021. Of course, that was inauguration of Joe Biden, who at that time won the election, and Donald Trump was refusing to recognize the outcome of that democratic election. We had very serious concerns that there would be a coup attempt. And so we took concrete steps to prepare for such an inevitability, or possibility, I should say. And not only were authorized to carry out a call for and carry out a general strike, but we reached out to political figures throughout the state in order to garner support for such work stoppages. And I'm pleased to say that did not become necessary in 2021. But here we are again with a federal government now under Trump, who has eliminated or sought to eliminate collective bargaining rights, union rights for nearly 1 million federal workers. He has essentially ended the federal mediation services, FMCS, that unions rely on. And he has turned the National Labor Relations Board into a tool of the bosses and the billionaires. We are facing massive attacks on everything that was built from the New Deal, the social contract that came out of the New Deal. from Trump and his billionaire allies. Nobody's coming to save us. The Democratic Party is not going to save us. The next election is not going to save us. Our power as working people, as the working class, as the labor movement, is in our solidarity, and it is in the fact that we are the ones that work. And if we are to withhold that labor, or if we are to rise up in mass demonstrations, being the 99%, there is power to that. But we need to very squarely understand nobody is coming to save us. This is for us to save ourselves as a working class and as a labor movement.
Absolutely. And I think there's, so much good stuff to comment on within what you just said. And, I think we're in a moment where, as far as the Democrats go, the expectations for them to do anything for us are so low that, when I've gone around talking to people at protests, I've heard a lot of people saying that they, really appreciate what Cory Booker's been doing. Or did, his grandstanding, his 25-hour long would-be filibuster. And, I think to your point, it's like those things are not enough. Those things are not enough. The Dems aren't going to help us. The only one who's doing anything that, you can kind of see has a clear material impact is Bernie Sanders from your state, which is, kind of a funny coincidence. That Vermont has, given rise to both of you. So I guess I would wonder what, if you have any other thoughts on that and kind of like moving beyond the electoral system and, what that looks like. And I know you've commented on that already, but if you have any other thoughts on that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, look, the Democratic Party is currently more desirable than the Republican Party because they're not fascist per se. The new Republican Party is a neo-fascist organization. This is a departure from status quo capitalism. However, the Democratic Party is not a party of working class people. The Democratic Party is funded by the same billionaires, the same donors that also backs the Republican Party. It's no mistake that when Obama was president, a Democrat, and controlled all branches of government, that party, the Employee Free Choice Act went exactly nowhere. When Joe Biden was president, the PRO Act went exactly nowhere. So part of the responsibility for the rise of this dangerous far right has to rest with the politics of the Democratic Party. When working class people are not stupid. When year in, year out, administration after administration, decade after decade, they see the Democratic Party on things that are truly meaningful. They see that their cost of living continues to go up. They see the billionaires are getting richer and us working people are getting poorer. They see that the system is not there to serve them, but it's there to serve the millionaires and billionaires. And at a certain point, working class people they're not going to be fooled to say, all we have to do is double down and vote on blue. And at that point, it's natural, unfortunate, but natural that some folks are going to look in other directions. And when they look in other directions, they're going to see an increasingly fascist Republican Party under Donald Trump saying that we have the solutions. Vote for me and eggs will be cheaper. Vote for me, we'll bring manufacturing back. Vote for me and I will solve all your problems. These are false solutions, but they represent a perceived alternative to working people. So the failures of the Democrats produce the kind of environment in the political landscape in which neo-fascists can win in elections. The place where organized labor, I believe, under Richard Trumka, the former AFL-CIO president, and now Liz Schuler, continues to fail out, is they have not been willing or able to create organized labor or reconstitute organized labor as an independent working class left political pole, separate from the Democratic Party. They have time and time again hitched their wagon to the Democrats. They have sent armies of lobbyists with suits and ties to Washington. And they have told our members time and time again, our fate is interwoven with the Democrats. And when that message is delivered to union members, and when they see President Joe Biden at the time screw over rail workers and take their right to strike away for this contract cycle and impose a contract that does not even provide one single day of paid sick leave, At a certain point, many people, unfortunately, are not seeing their own union organization, the AFL-CIO, as an independent force advocating for their better interests. What we need to do as labor is not repeat the same mistakes of the past. What we need to do is develop our own politics, our own policies, our own means of exerting our power. And again, our power is in our labor and is in our solidarity. And we need to build the kind of mass movement we saw in the 1930s that gave rise to the New Deal. We did not get the New Deal because FDR waved a magic wand and said, make it so. We achieved those great social advances of the New Deal because millions of workers were out in the streets. There were work stoppages all over this country. And the powers that be, both Republican and Democrat, frankly, were scared, fearful that there would be a revolution in this country if a new social contract was not forged, one that gave voice and power and security to working people. And that's what we need to get back to today. There's no two ways about it. And if we don't do that, we will fail. But I believe very strongly that we do have the power to win. And if we put our minds to it and develop this independent working class left politics, we have the numbers and we will prevail. It won't be easy. And there's many dangers down this path, but it is our only choice.
Absolutely. And I think, to kind of yes and a point that, you've been making, politicians are the kind of last node in this chain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
yeah.
all of these changes, like you're talking about, New Deal, politics, all of this came from a grassroots movement, and it moved up the chain to politicians. They're the last people that the baton is passed to.
Okay.
Nothing happens, and people like Hakeem Jeffries, whomever else, in charge of the Democratic establishment, they will act as though like the civil rights movement and all of these things just kind of were birthed out of electoralism. Like they just knew what to do, right? Like they knew that this is what the people needed. And so they put it forth. And that's not how any of this works.
As if Malcolm X never existed.
Exactly. Yeah, they would like to claim, responsibility for all of these things as if it wasn't, the concerted effort of people who fought and died for these things that forced them to make these changes. So I think that that's a really important thing that people should be, remembering in this moment, that nothing happens because politicians want it to happen. Things happen because the working class has demanded that those things happen. And I guess I would from there be, curious to hear more about like, what should we actually be doing? So, we have been talking about labor and, we have the lever that we have to push on is our labor. And that is something that, the billionaire class understands. How can we do that? What can we do economically to kind of push on that and show that we have the power to push forth these things? I've been, keeping track of like the town halls and stuff that have been going on around the country. And someone that I know went to a town hall in Jersey, I think last week, that I think Ro Khanna was at. Yeah, Ro Khanna did this, and there were a lot of like, resistance libs who were talking, and a lot of the questions that they asked was, well, what do we do now? Right? Like they can see that something is going on, that something is wrong. They probably aren't correctly assessing how we got to this point. But they can see that something's wrong, and they're asking, how can we fix this? What can we do besides, watching MSNBC? And I think like the what do we do now is very much missing from a lot of people's framework, because there has been such an effort to behave as though to have people think that electoralism is the only place where this momentum is kind of pushed into. So what else can we kind of offer people for a what next?
Well, here in Vermont, like all over the United States, on April 5th, we had thousands and thousands of working Vermonters out in the streets expressing their resistance and their opposition to this rising fascism. In our capital city of Montpelier alone, we had 10,000 people marching. Now, keep this in mind. The population of our city of Montpelier, we're a very small rural state here in Vermont, is 7,800. And there were 10,000 workers and allies marching in the streets of Montpelier saying no more. On May Day, we're going to have thousands more protesting across Vermont saying we will not accept fascism. That is not good enough. Our unions here today have, we've already started off talking about, are conducting serious trainings on how to carry out work stoppages and how to win and how to build the kind of solidarity in the shop floor, and for that solidarity to then expand out into community organizations and into the neighborhoods. Now, I'll tell you how we're not going to win. If the labor movement or social justice groups or what have you act in their own silos and only focus on their narrow self-interest, that's not the way we're going to build the kind of power we need. We need to break down those silos. We need to build a popular front, one of resistance, to organize and combat this fascism. We can do this and we will do this, but it'll be hard. It's going to take many different actions, but I'll tell you what it's not gonna help is if we're just bitching and moaning and watching the television and maybe saying to a friend next door that they're not happy. That's not going to solve the problem. And no one's going to buy the BS that all we have to do is elect in a few more pro-billionaire Democrats, and that's going to change things either. The cat's out of the bag on that one, and that one's not good enough. The kind of movement we need to build, again, is going back to the Great Depression, the type that underscored the New Deal, is one of mass action in the streets, mass actions in the factories and on the job sites, and a real sense of active solidarity, not just in words, but in deeds, between community organizations and labor groups. When we put all those pieces together, we are an incredible force. And what comes next is hard to say. We know that more attacks will be coming from Washington. We know these are unprecedented attacks. We know this is just the start. And we also know that if we don't show that mass commitment against fascism now, those attacks will only escalate. But again, when we're 99% of the people, the only reason we haven't won already is because we have to build the confidence of the folks to make sure if people understand that without us, without the regular people, there is no country. We are the country, but we need to be unafraid to take those next steps and to push back and to be militant and do whatever needs to be done to resist this rise of fascism. We can and will do this, but it will be hard.
Absolutely. And, you know, just for people who might want some more like information on what we're talking about here, can you kind of like talk about what this like mass action actually looked like in the 30s? What kind of labor actions did we see? I mean, we saw things like the sit down strike of the UAW. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you could talk a little bit more about that, so that people have a better idea of like when we say like mass labor actions, here is what people had to do in the past.
Well, until the New Deal saw its fruition, many of the things that we take for granted today that are under attack, the rights we have as labor, they were illegal. There was not a legal right to strike. And when we saw auto workers strike, occupy factories in Flint, Michigan, and said, these are our factories, fuck you. We are going to stand up and we demand recognition for our union and we need a better deal. They won recognition for the UAW. They won mass unionization across that sector and massively improved those jobs, those people's lives, and therefore helped a whole generation of working class people rise themselves up to a level that we've never seen previously in this country. And people were shot and killed on picket lines and striking actions all across the country. We did not have these rights. These rights that we have today that are under attack were created or ceded to labor, I should say, as a means to try to diffuse the rising tension, social tensions in this country. The billionaires forget that they had a self-interest in agreeing to those rights, because the alternative was revolution. And now the billionaires, generations removed, forget those lessons and are starting to remove those rights one by one again. So if it comes down to it, we have already faced this. Our grandparents already faced these same challenges and won, and we can do it again. And let's not forget that there are labor movements, militant, active, growing labor movements all over the world right now, many of which in countries that also don't have the same legal protections and rights that in some regards we are trying to defend, that we still have, that we are trying to defend today. And yet they are growing. Whole countries have shut down over general strikes because when the people decide enough is enough, all the repression in the world cannot stop them. The people are like a great tide. And when the tide comes in, it doesn't matter how many walls of sand you build, the tide will get to where it's going. And that's what we're going to do. That's what we have to do. And that's how we're going to get through this on the other side, stronger and victorious.
Absolutely. And, just to kind of recap, you are saying like we need to be doing more than just, the hands-off protests and marches. Like, that's great. And I personally, I see those things as kind of an entryway for people who have not been politically engaged yet. So it's a good way to kind of like dip your toe into doing something. And hopefully that will lead to, more organizing at the grassroots level beyond that, because you're saying, reminding us all that like when we're talking about, people fought and died for these rights, that meant things like occupying factories. So not just like marching through the streets on a Saturday, it's I am at my workplace, we have occupied it and we are not leaving until our demands are met. So that I think that's an important distinction. And there's things like, economic activity, like, real organized boycotts, things of that nature that we should all be thinking about right now.
Absolutely. But I don't mean to disparage in any way. We need to have mass protests, mass demonstration. That is a sign of strength in and of itself, too. That is part of what we need to be doing. And I'm looking forward to seeing thousands of people out here on the streets in Vermont and across the United States on May Day, the International Workers' Holiday. And that will be a very strong statement, too. So we all need to get involved at the level we can, but we can't simply stay within the bounds of symbolic action. We have to take real measures that create impacts on those in power, the billionaire class, that threatens their bottom line. And boycotts, protests, workplace actions, all of these things are part of a mosaic of a movement that we need to build and advance forward.
Absolutely. And the, like mass protests that we've all been seeing, I'm in New York City, so, we've been seeing a lot of marches and stuff too. There is an economic angle to that as well. If you shut down the streets, then that kind of, shuts down the economic activity in a way that the billionaire class understands. And also, is as you said, a statement on this is where the people are right now. So that's all extremely important. And I guess I would ask how you feel. You're from Vermont. You're organizing in Vermont. Bernie Sanders is, the most well-known politician from your state, and he is doing some interesting things right now. So he has his Fight the Oligarchy tour. I would be curious what your thoughts are on that, and if you feel like, what he's doing has the power to create a movement in the direction that you're talking about.
Bernie Sanders, of course, is not a Democrat, I like to point out. He's a democratic socialist. He's walked more picket lines with us here in Vermont than I could ever even count. He is a friend of working people. He always has been. He's consistent in his message. He knows what side he is on. His tour he's doing now is hugely important to galvanize and energize folks from all corners of this country into the resistance. There's an educational component to it, but there's also a morale component to it, and also a show of strength of building these alliances in communities, especially in states that tend to vote more Republican, where he's been drawing tens of thousands of people to these rallies. So Bernie is doing exactly what he needs to be doing at this juncture. And he is supporting what aspects of organized labor are also seeking to advance as well. So my hat is off to him. He's a true ally, and labor in Vermont has always stuck with him, and he's always stuck with us.
I've seen some criticisms of Bernie saying, as far as, the Fight the Oligarchy tour goes, saying that he isn't doing enough to kind of move the momentum into organizing.
Well, that's on us to do. Bernie Sanders is a United States Senator. Nobody is coming to save us. There is no politician from any political party or any ideology that is going to save us. As a public figure, as a former presidential candidate, as a U.S. Senator, as a person with a mass base, he is going out and saying, we must fight. And he is drawing tens of thousands of people to those rallies and trying to get them to be more active. It is on us as the labor movement, as grassroots organizations, to turn that energy into action. So I don't buy in any of those criticisms of Bernie. He is doing God's work. He's doing a wonderful job supporting organized labor. And it's on us to take those next steps, to fill in those blanks and aim that energy and aim that force in the direction of an active resistance.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I don't disagree with that. He has been holding up the electoral side of, working class left politics for quite a long time. And, I think that there, within the speeches that he gives and everything, like there is a call to action. And I think that we should be able to apply that. If you could talk a little bit more about the summit. And, I know that you said that there were a lot of notable speakers there, and, it was a big gathering of not just like labor leaders, but also rank and file workers. So I'd be curious to know who else spoke, what they said, and what you kind of took away from that as far as like where the labor movement, at least in Vermont, is right now.
Well, again, it was a whole day of trainings built around becoming strike ready. The final speaker we had was Mark Dimmenstein, who's the international president of APWU, the Postal Workers Union. He came up from Washington, D.C. He felt what we were doing was important enough where he wanted to be part of it. And in no uncertain terms, he discussed that this is a rising fascism, that fascism in Germany did not start with concentration camps. They ended in concentration camps. And all of the steps we see now, people being swept off the street at night, the attacks on unions, the attacks on free speech, the lies, the propaganda, the nationalism. These are things that we see manifesting now in our country. We can't wait until an historic tragedy occurs. We can't wait until things get worse. We need to fight now to shut that down before it grows, before it gets worse. But Mark Dimmenstein, really coming up, representing the postal workers, he made these very clear. And of course, we know the postal workers, the post offices are under attack right now in our country. There is a drive to privatize the Postal Service, even though the Postal Service is the one federal agency that's actually embedded in our Constitution. But of course, those in power now have no interest in our Constitution. They have no interest in upholding the true freedoms guaranteed there. And frankly, with the Supreme Court, which is also in the hands of right-wing extremists right now, have previously ruled that the president is essentially a king, essentially beyond legal repercussions while acting as president. That is a dangerous situation to be in. So I understand why we need to go to the courts and fight on every front we can. But if we're only fighting in the courts, if we're only fighting on the political election arena, then we are engaging the enemy, a well-funded enemy with trillions of dollars at his disposal, on ground, on terrain that is favorable to them. When you do not have those kind of resources, it is foolish to fight on their terrain. We have to fight in our terrain, and that's in our communities, that's in our factories, that's in our job sites, that's in our towns, that's in our cities, and we have to use our numbers to overcome them. I'm not saying that we shouldn't go to the courts, we should. I'm not saying that we shouldn't engage in elections, we should, but we shouldn't put all of our eggs in the basket of those venues because that favors the enemy.
Absolutely. And, to your point, if we are facing rising fascism, we should be all acting like it. I mean, if this is really like, pre-World War II, we are facing Hitler, we should be behaving as though that's what's happening. And it's not enough what we've been doing. And the Democrats as we both said, are not doing nearly enough, especially considering that they're the ones who have been telling us for years and years now that, President Trump is Hitler. I don't think they're acting like it. I cannot imagine thinking that if you believe that he is, going to bring in, conditions that Germany had during World War II. If you believe that, if you think that Cory Booker has done enough by talking for 25 hours, I just can't agree with that.
Mussolini would never have been stopped because somebody spoke up in the Italian parliament for a day. That's a silly premise. But I also take solace in the fact that Mussolini ended up being hung upside down with a meat hook in the end by partisan forces. So I do believe that history is on our side. We do have a trajectory, which I believe, as the great majority, we will ultimately prevail. But no, this can't be. You can't say too much about the danger we are in. Any vestiges we have as a democratic republic is rapidly melting away.
What do you think happens going forward? Where is the labor momentum headed in this? As we've kind of outlined, a very scary, critical moment. I would wonder what you think Vermont labor movements are going to do. Can we expect to see any kind of wildcat strikes or anything of this nature in the future?
Well, we need the national AFL-CIO to step up. It is imperative that the national leadership takes a very sober view of what they, in aggregate, have done or haven't done in the last 30 years, and very clearly recognize it as a failure, which contributes to the fact that we have the lowest union density nationally now than we ever had since our high point in the 1950s. They hitched their wagon to the Democratic Party and lost. They need to take real stock that court actions alone and lobbying will never, never amount to what we need it to amount to win this existential fight. Liz Schuler and her ilk need to understand that we have an imperative to organize a militant movement which is unafraid of taking militant direct action. That is how we will overcome. I invite Liz Schuler to agree with me on this. I know in the past they have been what I would consider timid, but now is not a time to be timid if we are going to face down this rising fascism. As for what we will see in Vermont, we will continue to see mass demonstrations happening frequently, the next one being this May Day. We will continue to see agitation among our unions regarding the need for us to step up and take a more militant, a stronger approach when it comes to defending our rights and expanding our rights. I cannot say with certainty what is around the next bend, the bend in the road. But I do know that we need to be absolutely ready and prepared to act at every step of the way. And what we are doing in Vermont today is seeking to be ready. We are also not foregoing legislative issues at the state level. We are poised to pass the Vermont AFL-CIO. The current leadership is poised to pass an amendment which would make forming a union a right within our state constitution. That's should be out of the State House this year, and then we'll go to a vote of the members. But of course, the best language in the world in a state constitution will not matter when there is an authoritarian fascist regime in Washington, D.C., which A, does not care about the U.S. Constitution, let alone the rights guaranteed in state constitutions. So again, it's only going to be direct action, mass solidarity, mass action that wins the day. We will win, but it will be hard.
Absolutely. And I guess I would just ask, what I would note also, you have been part of the AFL-CIO, just for viewers to know. So you've been part of the AFL-CIO. And beyond that, I would ask if there's anything else that you would like to add, anything else that you think is important, for viewers to note about this moment, about labor, and any of the above.
If you're a union member, tell Liz Schuler, now is the time to act. Now is the time for us to be unafraid. Now is the time to take action, to take to the streets and do whatever needs to be done to face down this existential threat. If you're not in a union, now is the time to form a union in your work site. We need all working class people to be organized, be under a coordinated umbrella, and for us all to watch out for each other and act on the notion that an attack on one is an attack on all. We need to stand in active solidarity. And when we do that, we have the numbers and we have the power to win.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking with me, David. This has been great, and I'm sure the viewers are going to get a lot and know better, the labor terrain in Vermont and across the country. If you liked this, please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to Status Coup News. And if you can, please do consider becoming a paid member for as little as $5 a month so that we can keep bringing you interviews like this and do our on-the-ground reporting. Thanks again. Thank you all for watching. And again, David, I really appreciate you being here to speak with me today.
Solidarity.